Will we continue to embrace truth, justice, peace, and a path to prosperity? I believe that America's best days can still be ahead, and I want to lead us forward. Join me now in the Reid Revolution.
Welcome back on this Wednesday morning, brand new month, the first day of April. Back when we were doing the morning show, we'd say rabbit, rabbit, which is some old wives' tale that if you say rabbit, rabbit at the first thing out of your mouth at the start of a new month, it'll be a great month for you. So I'm just going to put that down. If I can get 50% better than last month, then I'm excited about that. But glad that you are with us today watching the events in Washington, both with Iran supposedly saying they want some sort of ceasefire, sending messages to Donald Trump and Marco Rubio that they want the war to stop. And, I wouldn't trust them. Listen, we've gone so far already on this thing. We've killed a bunch of their leaders, which I don't think we should apologize or feel bad about. It was interesting. I was at Hampton-Sydney last night, Hampton-Sydney College in Virginia, talking about the redistricting scheme that the Democrats are pushing through in Virginia. And in the building across the street from where I was speaking was Senator Tim Kaine. I didn't get to see Tim Kaine. I wasn't going to hang around to talk to him. But anyway, I thought it was interesting that I was in one building with 50 students. I don't know how many of the students showed up for Senator Kaine. Hopefully more. If you're a sitting senator, you should pack the room, I would think. But anyway, I was surprised at how many of the students expressed some concern about the war in Iran. And this isn't, University of California at Los Angeles or UC Berkeley or American University or the Peaceniks of Georgetown. I would have expected more people to be kind of gung-ho about taking out the Ayatollah in Iran at Hampton-Sydney. Just having gone to school with a lot of those people 20 or 30 years ago, 40 years ago in my life, this was interesting that they expressed concern. It says to me that there's been some sort of shift, and I've heard about this. People have warned me, hey, John, your attitude is not shared by younger folks, even without a draft. See, that's the other thing. If there was a draft where if you were 18 years old, you thought, oh my God, I'm planning on going to business school, or I'm planning on taking over dad's business, or I'm planning on starting a family and now I'm going to get drafted. That would be a reason where I could understand the average young man and young woman saying, oh, I'm not in favor of this war. But without a draft, it's very interesting that there was some pushback. I don't know how widespread it was, just a couple of people who came up afterwards and shared their concerns about the war. To me, that indicates that we haven't done a very good job of making sure that this generation actually knows who the enemy is. And you got to be careful. You shouldn't just label everybody you disagree with as an enemy. A one-time conflict doesn't mean that you should label someone a mortal enemy. One bad election where you don't like the current leader of the country is not a reason to label somebody an enemy. So I think it's important to be careful before you go around picking fights with everyone or, poisoning the well with people long term just because of a short term situation or a one-off conflict. I think that's really important. Like Great Britain right now, there are a lot of conservatives who really despise the current prime minister of Great Britain. And I don't know how objective I can be about it, but it appears to me that his policies are doing a great deal of harm to his country. And because of our connection, both historically through Western civilization and in a practical sense, politically and culturally and economically with Great Britain, I think he's doing harm to us. So I'm not a fan of the current prime minister, but that doesn't mean that we should tank the relationship between the United States of America and Great Britain. We should call him out, and I think President Trump is doing that, but you don't create enemies. But there are rogue nation states that want to murder you and me, and there's no doubt about it. And they've demonstrated that it's not just bluster. They're very capable and willing to kill Westerners. And we need to be smart enough to acknowledge that. And we need to make sure that the next generation of people that are coming up who will be voting minimally and probably in leadership positions going forward, that they're aware of what has happened in the past and the current threat, and they don't dismiss it as some momentary conflict. This is a real conflict with Iran. It's been going on for 47 years. There are a lot of dead people and a lot of people who have disappeared and been kidnapped and ransomed and blown up and had their heads chopped off. And Iran has been the evil actor in the world for a long time. And I just am not going to worry about or cry about decapitating that country. And the fact that they've been so belligerent, and a little later in the show, I think we'll have an opportunity to show some of the propaganda that they're sending out with the internet. They don't have to get approval from anybody. It's not filtered. It just goes right to the people, which is pretty effective for them. Objectively, I can step back and say, hey, this is pretty effective propaganda. And it's going to move people around the world to hate the United States, and it will probably move people who are not based, they're not grounded in the history of our relationship with Iran, to hate the United States. That's why you got to explain all of these horrible activities around the world in the last 4 decades, almost 5 decades, have some connection to Iran. Iran has financed them. Iran has supported them. Iran has helped people to escape justice. And the fact that they don't give up, the leadership doesn't give up, and I hate this for the people of Iran because I know a couple of people who have come to the United States from Iran. It's not like I got an axe to grind with the average person from Iran, Muslim from Iran. I don't have an axe to grind with you. But if you're going to support Islamic Jihad, now we got a problem. And apparently I'm one of the few people who's willing to just say it that bluntly. If you in any way flirt with the idea of Islamic Jihad and you want to kill me and harm my country, we're going to have a problem. And unfortunately for you, and fortunately for me, we're the big dog right now. I'm not convinced it's always going to be that way, but I think it should always be that way. And we'll blow you off the face of the earth if we have to, in order to make you stop killing our people. I mean, how much more clear can it be? I think the United States is probably, other than the economic interest, reached a place where they're, and I don't know that this is a good thing, but I don't think most Americans care what happens to the average citizen on the other side of the planet. I don't think that's necessarily good. Unless some Hollywood star and, the movement of Hollywood decides to make something a cause celeb for a year, most Americans really don't care. They don't care about slavery in Africa. They want to fight, or they want to refight the Civil War here in the United States. Slavery's over with. The Civil War has been over with, 160 plus years. And we're interested in discussing it nonstop and refighting it here. But you really don't care about slavery. If you did, you'd be worried about the modern slave trade. But that's too complicated, and that involves some uncomfortable decisions. That means you have to hurt some people who are bad people, and you don't want to be the one to be judgmental because, God forbid you're judgmental against people who are murderers and enslavers, right? You'd rather just cast aspersions on dead people and what their motives are. You see what I'm saying? So, other than the fact that Iran is in this region where we get a lot of oil and where we are stupidly tied to this OPEC arrangement, I still keep coming back to, why are we in this? We've apparently got enough oil and gas domestically where we don't have to engage with these people. Why are we doing it? Why are we sending all this American money to groups of people and nations that hate us and want to kill us? Why are we still doing that? What are we getting out of that? When I go to Dubai, when I go to Kuwait, when I go to Bahrain, when I go to the UAE, when I go to Saudi Arabia, all places I've been, I look around and I'm like, yeah, they're doing really well financially. And it isn't because they're computer geniuses and creating products that everybody wants around the world, it's based on oil. It's based on energy. So why are we still engaged in this arrangement? I I don't know. I mean, once you start saying, "Hey, I don't have to accept everything as it is," which is a pretty big step, you start thinking, "Wait a minute. We're taking all of our wealth and transferring it to people who want to kill us. Why are we doing that?" But most Americans don't want to be bothered. They just want to go to the gas pump and have gas that's $2 or less. And okay, you know, that's worked for a couple of decades with the occasional terrorist action and the constant threat of murder. But now Donald Trump, and I think he is correct, has decided we're not going to let you have a nuclear bomb because these nutcase, crazy, wacko religious zealots would kill us in mass if they had an opportunity to. And once they've got a nuclear weapon, you have to treat them differently. You have to. You have to negotiate differently. You have to engage with them differently. And these are religious zealots. They're religious wackos. Let's just face the reality. So I'm all for what President Trump has done. And I was concerned that there is maybe a significant group of people who were in their 20s and 30s who, I don't want to insult them and say they don't know the history. Maybe they do know the history, but their calibration, their calculation on this is very different from those of us who have lived through decades of this type of conflict. And I wish Iran would just give up and say, hey, we're going to sell our gas and we're going to, I mean, it would be hard for me to accept them oppressing their people, but if that was the trade-off, morally, that would be difficult. But yeah, leave everybody else alone around the world. Stop exporting terror and do what you want in your own country. That would bother me, but compared to having a full-fledged war, maybe that's a better plan, but they won't. And they've demonstrated that. They'll lie to you every step of the way. They'll say, oh, I'm not, I mean, it's kind of like walking in on somebody cheating, right? Oh, what were you doing? Why won't you open that door? Is there somebody in there? What's going on? Oh, no, nobody in there. Yeah, there's somebody in there. They're lying to you because you just caught them. That's what's happening here. Maybe that's something everybody can understand, that kind of scenario. Well, that's what's happening on the international scene. These people are liars. And so when I hear today that they've offered some sort of concession or they want a ceasefire with Donald Trump, I don't think he's stupid. I think he will question everything, even though I'm sure the pressure is building on him to get this thing over with, because Americans can tolerate something for, 48 hours? They think that they're binge watching a Netflix series. Foreign Affairs is like a Netflix series. Yeah, I'll put up with it for, 8 episodes, but then we got to move on to something else. I mean, that's the mindset. This is not going to serve us very well when you have groups of people who are willing to play the long game. That's Iran. Quite frankly, that is definitely China, and that's Russia too. They're playing the long game, and we are suffering from a lack of attention and the desire to pretend that everything's okay. Let's just get this done, and then we can pretend everything's okay. Everything's not okay. So that's of concern that happened last night. We'll watch what happens in the next 24 hours now that this story is out about Iran supposedly offering some sort of concession or ceasefire agreement with Trump. That's the big news. I guess we're about to fly around the moon again, which is fantastic. I think that's great. Think of all the money we have wasted on welfare programs in the last 20 or 30 years. All the people we have fed and bought their cell phones and paid for their press-on nails and paid their rent and thrown money at them for their illegitimate children. And we feel good about that for some reason, instead of doing what responsible governments and countries do, which is expand the research and the exploration of distant places so that you remain the dominant country on the planet and you advance human exploration for another generation. I mean, the welfare program in the United States, if it was just designed to make sure we didn't have people starving in the streets, And that I would support that. But it's not. It's become an entire way of life for huge sections of Americans. Not blacks, not whites, not Latinos, not I think fewer Asians than anybody else. But we've created a welfare program, and it's sucking away all the money we should be using to advance this nation and to advance humanity. And we've been stupid for behaving that way. You should be taking care of yourself and your own children, illegitimate or not. You should be taking care of your family. You should be paying your own bills. I'm stressed out. I don't know how I'm going to pay all my bills. Why aren't other people stressed out about that? Why aren't they trying to come up with creative ways to earn a living, not take a paycheck from the government so that they can pay their bills? Is that an unfair question? Are you going to accuse me of racism for asking that question? Sorry, I think it's time for us to say we're shifting from subsidizing the people who don't contribute to our society, who just exist in our society, to using the resources we have to advance America and humankind. And I personally believe that the space program is the future, and it is one of the things that we should pour billions of dollars into, so that we can benefit from this research, and that ultimately, whatever happens on planet Earth, if it's in 50 years or 500 years, America will have led the movement to explore space and have options for humankind. That seems to be a controversial statement. I'm puzzled why, especially after we've given this entire welfare, great society concept, more than 50 years to work, and it's totally failed. It has not solved the problems. It has not solved homelessness. It has not solved generational poverty. So at some point, don't you look up, and maybe 50 years is the point at which you look up and go, yeah, we gave it a good shot. We burned through huge amounts of money. We're now $39 trillion in debt. If I got to decide where I'm spending the money, it's going to be on the research that might provide a solution for us in the future, instead of subsidizing people who are a net drain on society. Could be very nice people. Don't get me wrong. I'm not advocating killing anybody. I'm not advocating hurting anybody. I'm not advocating being rude and mean and nasty to people. I'm just saying we're not paying for you anymore. Right? There's a difference in leaders who treat you like you're a parasite and want to eliminate you. I'm not suggesting that. I'm suggesting that we make conscious, smart decisions about where we spend our money. And I would argue money is better spent flying to the moon and preparing ourselves to populate outside of the earth than it is to subsidize welfare families in the United States. Your church can do that if you still go to church. Let your church take care of that. All of you liberals, all of you rich Hollywood types who constantly want to lecture everyone about how mean and nasty and not good conservatives are, why don't you pick up the bill? The people who've made millions and millions of dollars, how about this deal? We won't tax you. You just voluntarily take another 25% of your income and you spend it on programs. You can organize it yourself and see if you can come up with a really cost-efficient way to solve the problems that clearly government has been incapable of solving. I would encourage that. I think that's a fantastic idea. You put your resources in it and you manage it. And then you don't obligate people like me who have really decided that this is a loser, and prove me wrong. Go ahead, prove me wrong. Let's take the top 10 earners in Hollywood and pool their money together and come up with a program, and you don't even have to make it nationwide, just in California, where they're already taxing the hell out of everybody. Get the top 10 earners in Hollywood, or let's make it big, the top 100 earners in Hollywood, and you all each put together, I don't know, pick a number, $10 million, $20 million, and you commit to that for this year and next year. Make it a 5-year plan like the old Soviet Union, a 5-year plan, 5-year commitment for that kind of money, and you show us how it's done. You show us how a program can be put together that is efficient, that solves the problem. It ain't going to work, but I encourage you to try to do it because the government has failed at it. And I'm tired of spending tax money on something that's a failure when we could do the grand, amazing, important work like flying into space so that we can survive into the next century. And I hate to say it, I'm not one of these science fiction people who, watches a movie with Will Smith, whatever that movie was, where, the world is end. I'm not a fatalist that the world is going to end, but I do think we need to come up with solutions for the next century. And that should be the goal of the government. That should be the goal of government scientists and American thinkers and American entrepreneurs, not continuing to throw money away on something that subsidizes bad behavior and failure. I think that's an important point. So I will be very excited if Artemis lifts off safely today. I've been down to Cape Canaveral and watched one of these launches. I watched one of the last space shuttle launches in person, and it is a remarkable thing to see. And to me, it gives me hope for the future. This kind of project gives me hope for America and for humankind. And I don't know how you feel about it. I think that's pretty important right now. Because when I look at the No Kings rally, I lose all hope. I mean, what a collection of ridiculous clowns who are living out some sort of tyrannical fantasy in an effort, I think, maybe not individually, but the organizers in an effort to destroy America. I don't think they're trying to protect America. I'm not saying everybody who was out there isn't sincere. I think there are a lot of really sincere people who are being punked into doing things that will harm their own country. But I looked at Saturday. I don't know if you saw my post on social media on Sunday. I went to Palm Sunday, and I just thought, oh, my God, is America going to survive? There are 8 million really delusional, bizarre people in the streets, some of them waving communist flags. I don't know why people attacked me and said, why are you talking about communism? Communism doesn't exist. And then I sent them screenshots and said, no, well, I don't know what world you're living in, but the communists are a part of the Democrat Party now. That is their home. And they were all out marching around on Saturday. And I don't think they've got noble motives. I don't think they want to make America better. I think they want to take the country down. And I'm gonna, at least while I can, I'm going to do everything I can to try to stop that. Here's another issue, and I've got former Senator Joe Morrissey coming up in a couple of moments. He's a long-time Democrat leader who was purged from his own party. He's going to talk to us about his pretty brave op-ed going against the gerrymandering scheme. I mean, if they hated him before this, they're really going to hate him now. And I admire the fact that he's willing to stand up against his own party. We'll talk to Joe in just a couple of minutes. But take a look at this. There's the redistricting referendum op-ed that we'll talk about with Joe Morrissey in a moment. But take a look at this. The Kennedy Center, which is now renamed the Trump Kennedy Center. Honestly, I just think that's such an overreach, but whatever. I mean, at this stage, it's minor compared to all the other things. I mean, I don't know why anyone expects Donald Trump to restrain himself when people in the Democrat Party tried to malign him, block him, bankrupt him, put him in prison, and are celebrating minimally. I don't know that I can say that they were behind the efforts to kill him, but they're celebrating the efforts to kill him. Why would the guy show any restraint now? I mean, you've shown no restraint. The leftists in the United States have shown zero restraint in their interaction with him. He can't go to the Kennedy Center without some sort of ugly situation. I mean, for 4 years, when in the first term, he couldn't go to the Kennedy Center honors because the arts community, the people who are so tolerant and they want to coexist with everybody, they think they're going to coexist with an Islamic jihadist with a sword, somehow that they're going to be able to talk to these people and they're going to coexist with these folks and not get their heads chopped off. but they won't coexist with Donald Trump, an American developer who supported Democrat causes for the longest time. They won't coexist with him. They're going to make that a miserable experience so that we lose the arts community in the nation's capital. And they've continued, even when Donald Trump took over the institution and said, let's broaden the swath of artistic endeavors here. We'll find donors, we'll find money. They still were belligerent and said they wouldn't cooperate with Donald Trump or any Republican. And they were pretty nasty and rude and awful about it, to be honest with you. So why would I don't think that I would ever, if I were in the same situation as Donald Trump, that I would put my name on the building. I would, I'm kind of old-fashioned Virginia. I would like for other people to suggest honors for me rather than me doing it myself. But whatever. I mean, at this point, none of the norms exist anymore. None of them exist anymore. So, okay. So Donald Trump puts his name. He puts his name on the Kennedy Center. That's the least of my concerns. That's really low on the list of norms, societal and cultural norms that have been lost in America. I'd put that pretty low. What we're seeing all across the country is much more alarming to me. What we saw in 2020 with Antifa and BLM, and even today, we've proven that BLM, time and time again, city after city after city, BLM was a total scam, robbing people, not using the money. I mean, go flying to San Francisco, flying to Los Angeles, flying to Las Vegas, buying big expensive homes for themselves. And the whole thing was just a total scam. And no one really wants to admit it. You're an awful person, supposedly, if you tell the truth about what BLM did in America. God, I'm sorry about that. Why is it that you're so resistant to being told the truth? That's a pretty big. There was a time in my life where if you exposed a scam like that, everybody, Republican and Democrat, would say, "Ooh, God, that's pretty awful. We're going to have to prosecute these people." And they just won't do it now. So the arts community is leading that effort, and they continue to be obnoxious and outrageous, which I can tolerate on some level. Like when I go into downtown Richmond, there's a mural. I wish I'd taken a picture of it. I know I've taken a picture of it in the past. Producer Dan, next time we're in downtown Richmond, as you roll off the highway towards the city and you're about to cross Broad Street, look off to the left. There's a big mural, and it includes the names. It's a well-done mural. It's not like Italian Vatican artwork, but it's a relatively well-done mural, and it includes all the names of every street thug who has been killed by the cops. And I'm supposed to feel bad about that. Now, I see it every time I come into downtown Richmond. It annoys me every time because I know the stories behind these people, like George Floyd. I'm sorry. I mean, I don't think anybody deserves to die. I'm sorry that he's dead, I guess. I mean, it seems like a pretty horrible person to me. And I suspect that had he continued to live, he would have ruined more people's lives. So that's not very nice to say, but I think that's the truth. But I'm not going to cheer on someone's death, but I'm also not going to mourn the death of someone who is such a horrible person who put themselves in a situation where they're wrestling with the cops and they wind up dying from one of two or three different scenarios. And it's not my place to issue a verdict on that. But, if you weren't high on drugs and you hadn't been arrested, you hadn't been fighting the cops, and you weren't in a situation where you could have a heart attack or stop breathing yourself, maybe you'd still be alive. You do have to take some responsibility for your own decisions that put you in bad situations that cost you, in some cases, cost you your life. But there's this mural. It's up there. I hate it. I'm offended by it every time I go by. But I don't, it doesn't cross my mind. Maybe I got to change my attitude. It doesn't cross my mind to call the mayor of Richmond and say, that really should come down. I don't know who owns that building. Is it a private building? We should change the zoning because it really offends John Reid from Western Henrico. When I come into the city, I hate seeing it. I do hate seeing it. And if you ask me about it, I'll tell you without any shyness, that I despise it, but I wouldn't try to take it down. Producer Dan, show what they're doing in Providence with one of the very nice murals for this innocent woman who was murdered in Charlotte, North Carolina. There are these murals going up all over the place for Ernia Zarutska, who was stabbed in the neck in Charlotte. She didn't do anything wrong. She's Ukrainian, for God's sake. You'd think all these Democrats who have Ukraine flags on their front porch would actually have a certain amount of sympathy for her, but they don't. Show what they're about to do with this beautiful mural there.
I spoke with Mayor Smiley's office over the phone this morning. They tell me the mayor wants this mural taken down. We stopped by the site earlier today. The mural still stands, incomplete, on the backside of the Dark Lady, a gay club downtown. It's part of a nationwide project to honor Irina Zarutska, who was stabbed to death in North Carolina last summer. Her death made national headlines, with some conservatives, including President Trump, pointing to lenient court systems in Democrat-run states. Elon Musk also made a sizable donation to the mural project. I spoke with a painter behind the Providence mural on Friday. He says he never viewed the tribute as political, and some people I spoke with this afternoon agree.
Here in Rhode Island, in Providence, this is what we're about. We should be accepting of everything and take politics aside. Honor the people who need to be honored and just stop, And I know the divisiveness of today's politics, and it can be very, very divisive, but stop. Let it go forward.
Okay. Look, I think that's a little naive on that lady's part, but I think her instincts are right. Her heart's in the right place on this. This woman was totally innocent. No one has ever said that Irina did anything wrong. She was on the bus. Coming home from work, if I remember correctly, right? So, Democrats constantly tell us that violent illegal immigrants are a figment of our imagination. This is just something that the Republicans have made up because we supposedly hate immigrants, which is not true. It's not true that we hate immigrants, and it's not true that it's a fantasy idea that they're violent people in our midst who shouldn't be in the country. And it's shocking to me that we've reached a place in 2025, 2026, where there's an entire party of people who will not acknowledge the truth and will not stand up for innocent people. And so they'll defend the George Floyd mural, which I don't like, but okay. It's not my place to tell everybody what to do. If it's your building, and if we allow murals, then I guess I'm stuck having to look at your stupid mural. I don't like it, and I might even drive around it so I don't have to see it because it does annoy me. But I don't think that it's my place. As long as it's not pornographic or totally psycho, it's not my place to tell you to take it down, right? But when it comes to this mural about a woman who's totally innocent, who didn't do anything wrong, and it makes a statement about her and remembers her, and it points out the double standard. It's not just a double standard about art, and it's not just a double standard about the law. It's a double standard about the way we're handling everything in this society today. And the mayor in Providence is trying to get this thing taken down. I think that is ridiculous and outrageous. I wouldn't want a mayor who was doing that. And if I were mayor of Richmond, as much as I hate that mural, if somebody came to me, I'd say, I don't like it. It doesn't reflect my opinions, but I don't own the building. And we allow murals in Richmond. So unless it's pornographic, I can't do anything to help you. How come I'm able to show, at least rhetorically in this role, that type of intellectual honesty and consistency, but no one in elected offices? Because you're not holding people accountable. You're not holding Abigail Spanberger accountable for saying that she's for law enforcement, but then not supporting law enforcement, cooperating with federal law enforcement to get the violent people out. You should hold her accountable for that. And we have another story today in Virginia from Nick Minnock. Thank God Nick Minnock will cover these stories about another illegal who has murdered somebody. So in the last 2 or 3 weeks, we've had the murder of Stephanie Mentor, the 41-year-old innocent mom at the bus stop. We've had the story about the illegal who molested the kids, allegedly, on this bus. Now you've got this story. The stories are stacking up. It's not made up. This is real. Why are we refusing to address it? And why are we allowing Democrat leaders to act like it's not an issue and that they just refuse to talk about it. The little Ayatollah, Ghazala Hashmi, refused to talk about it. What, is that beneath you? You don't think this is a real issue? You don't think the dead people in your own state, you need to address this issue? Enforcing the law isn't something that you actually care about? You're going to roll your eyes like this every time somebody dies in Virginia because you and your comrades decided not to take care of the issue? I mean, and then we got the video. We don't have to play it because I got to go. But, we got the same kind of attitude from Abigail Spanberger, the governor. Miss Moderate. She doesn't want to answer these questions. Look, just admit you're wrong. It's okay. Admit you're wrong and recalibrate and try to save the rule of law in Virginia and save innocent people in Virginia. I would suggest that that's an important thing to do. If you do that, I'm not going to vote for you, but I will applaud you publicly for having the political wisdom and the personal moral code to recognize that you made an error and you need to enforce the law fairly and you need to protect the citizens of Virginia. I know they don't care what I think, but I'll just tell you, if there is an acknowledgement that they've made a mistake, I will come on here and I will tell people as I travel around the state that I am glad that they've acknowledged it. So that's pretty important, I think. So keeping on this theme, and hey, producer Dan, you let me know when Joe Morrissey is ready to come on the show. I'm talking about what I wanted to talk about anyway, but you let me know when Joe is there because I don't want to infringe on his time, and I don't want, since he's a lawyer, I don't want him to send me a bill for the time that he's sitting there waiting. But here's another example of how crazy the arts community has become. I think if you watched any of the video from Saturday, people really put some effort into these paper mache maquettes and puppets. And, on the one hand, I got to give you credit. Who has time for this? Who has money for this to create all this garbage that was paraded around during the No Kings protest? The costumes, they were very creative costumes. You must have some cash. I worry about whether I'm going to spend $100 on a Halloween costume for an adult Halloween party, to go have drinks and eat some candy with my friends. But you've got hundreds, if not thousands of dollars to spend on this stuff. So it's just interesting to me. Must not be that rough for a lot of these people who are going to go protest against Donald Trump. Donald Trump hasn't completely ruined your economic future if you've got all this money to spend on costumes and paper mache designs that are 20 feet tall with, puppeteers bringing them down the street. I don't know. Is George Soros paying for that too? But here's the latest thing, which you may have seen. I'm going to be in D.C. tomorrow, so I'm curious as to whether I can see this in person because it's so obnoxious and stupid. It's the Golden Toilet in D.C. And for some reason, apparently, you're allowed to just put an art exhibition on the mall. I don't know if they applied for a permit and they were granted a permit. I should probably look that up. I'm having done a lot of events in D.C. over my career. It's a hassle to get a permit to do anything on the mall in Washington, or at least it was when I was trying to do it. And you had to plan ahead, and it cost money, and it was a pain to put anything permanent, even like a tent that was going to be up for a couple hours. That was a pain. They did not want to make it easy for you. So here's this Golden Toilet that I guess is supposed to be related to Donald Trump. Everything. Oh, okay, Donald Trump likes to gold leaf everything. So here's the Golden Toilet in Washington, and so all these tourists are stopping by to take pictures with the Golden Toilet. Ha ha ha! So funny, so clever. I don't think it's that funny. I don't think it's that clever. But whatever, it gets people talking about the excesses of Trump, hypothetically. This is where I start to wonder where the creative conservatives are. I'm 55 years old. I ran for statewide office. I'm willing to do a couple of things that are a little outside of the norm. But there's some things I'm just not going to do. Where are the radical conservatives who would go and take a picture of Chuck Schumer's head and put it in the toilet, have it popping up out of the toilet, or have have AOC's head tomorrow popping up out of the toilet? You have Barack Obama and Michelle Obama standing behind the toilet in their bathrobes or something. It's just weird to me that there's never any response. Now, maybe in fairness, maybe there is a response, and we never see it because the press is so biased that they show the toilet, but then they don't show the counter protest. I suspect that it's more of our people being like normal people and not having time for this and finding it kind of offensive and beneath them to go and get involved in this. But I think that's an interesting dynamic. I would love to see some rich conservative fund a group of wacko artist right-wingers who would go and counter-protest this garbage just to kind of keep it fair a little bit, because there's a lot to mock. There's a lot about the modern Democrat Party. One of the things that I do think is humorous is Hakeem Jeffries, who is likely to be the Speaker of the House. God, I mean, what in the world are we doing? Hakeem Jeffries, have you listened to any interviews with this guy? Does he strike you as someone that you want to put a heartbeat away from the presidency? Really? And it's not because he's black. Please don't misunderstand. It's not because he's black. It's just I deal with a lot of minority people, men and women, who are brilliant, and it wouldn't bother me at all to have them in a leadership position with a company that I'm associated with or in the government, because they're brilliant people who are very grounded, and you can't pull anything past them. And I think they're smart and hardworking and thoughtful and not partisan hacks. Hakeem Jeffries, whatever you want to say about him, he's a partisan hack. That is how he got to the Capitol. That's the way he carries himself. I haven't seen, you correct me, is there anything you could point to in Hakeem Jeffries' career in the Congress and in the leadership of the House of Representatives of the Democrat Party that would indicate that he is country above party for all the times that people talk about that? I don't mean just country above party, we hate Donald Trump, but some decision that you could point to that indicates a noble attitude that might cost him something or might cost his party something, or there was some negotiation behind the scenes that he's credited for that he didn't go out and run in front of the. I'm not aware of anything. Nothing. And that's part of the problem in Washington. I don't think there are a lot of noble people left, certainly in the modern Democrat Party, and maybe there are a few left in the Republican Party. When we come back, we'll talk to someone who, certainly makes headlines and he's a controversial figure, but he's been willing to stand up to his own party on issues that he believes in. And he's suffered the consequences because here in Virginia, the Democrats purged Joe Morrissey. They got rid of him because he would not toe the party line on abortion in particular, but on a bunch of other issues. And now he's doing it again by speaking out against the gerrymandering scheme. Joe Morrissey, the former senator, up next here on the Reid Revolution.
They defied a court order and ignored the rule of law. Now Richmond politicians are drawing new congressional districts to rig the game for themselves. They want to eliminate competitive elections in Virginia so they can protect sanctuary city policies that put dangerous criminal aliens back on our streets. Here's what we should do with these corrupt maps. Stick them right in the trash. Vote no on partisan gerrymandering.
Yep, I hope you will vote now and vote no. Gosh, every day I'm telling you need to do that, and I still have not taken my ballot to the Henrico courthouse. I got to do that, and I got to go get Alonzo and make sure he votes. I think he's going to vote the right way, but I need to make sure that I do the pitch and get him to vote no so that he's not confused when he reads this very misleading language. It's really important to bank this early because did you see the number yesterday? $38 million, supposedly, on hand for Democrats to run television and digital ads to try to trick people into voting away their own rights in Virginia, to try to trick people in rural areas to vote yes and thus not have local representation in the United States House of Representatives, and to try to motivate people in Northern Virginia who hate Donald Trump and I guess hate Republicans to stomp on their neighbors, protect democracy by destroying democracy. It is unbelievable, the propaganda that's out there. And Democrats have apparently raised $38 million. And I think it's going to be shocking to me if Republicans wind up with 10, 15 million at best, to try to counter that. That's why I'm working so hard and traveling all over the place to talk about this issue. And it's why I want to talk to former Senator Joe Morrissey today. Hey, Joe, good to see you.
John,
I appreciate you joining us.
Good to hear you. I've been listening to your interview for the last 20 minutes. I don't know if you can see my picture there, but hopefully you can.
Yeah, you're perfect. You're perfect. So what motivated you to step out of line again and write this op-ed against the gerrymandering referendum? Your former friends are really going to hate you for this.
Well, that certainly won't cause me to lose any sleep,
Okay.
First of all, John. Second of all, you prefaced your comments earlier about me being controversial. I'm controversial because I speak truth to power.
Yeah.
I just tell it the way it is. And the fact is, when I was in the Senate and in the House, I served over a dozen years, 12, 13 years in the Virginia General Assembly. When I spoke out and the Democrats liked, my Democratic colleagues liked what I had to say, it was rah, rah, yeah, Joe. But if I said something that they didn't agree with, then I was the controversial Joe. For example, I spoke out and said allowing abortion up until the day before delivery is flat out wrong. Well, then when I said that, among the Democrat leadership, I was persona non grata.
Right.
So I've done today with this op-ed piece everything that I've done for the last 15 years and just call it the way I see it.
Well, give us the synopsis of why you have decided to make this public statement.
Okay. So go back to 2020. I was in the state Senate, and there was a lot of divisiveness because the House was controlled by ours, the Senate controlled by Democrats. There was a 2020 election coming up, and nobody could agree on almost anything, with one exception, John. Everybody agreed that gerrymandering was bad. All right. I remember, I still have the t-shirt, literally, gerrymandering sucks. So all of us, Democrats, Republicans, suburbanites, people in Western Virginia, city dwellers, R's, D's, said, listen, let's form a nonpartisan redistricting commission that will take the politics out of drawing these lines. And we did it.
Right.
We set up a redistricting commission. It worked. 2 out of 3 Virginians voted in favor of it, and everybody took a victory lap. We had done something that was good.
And it took a lot of effort to convince Republicans that this was an okay plan, if I remember correctly. I mean, it was a real hard sell for some Republicans, but they went along with it.
I remember some Democrats didn't like it, but we all agreed, because this is the problem. The people that controlled the power, whether it was the R's in the House or the D's in the Senate, they wanted to maintain that power and draw their own lines. You with me?
Yeah.
But the other people that weren't in power said, no, let's go to the redistricting commission. So they were on both sides, but smarter heads prevailed, and we got this nonpartisan redistricting commission, and it worked. And they drew all the lines. The Supreme Court called in 2 masters, and it was divided 6-5. Okay.
Which pretty much matches the voting patterns of Virginians. I'm being
Exactly.
accurate when I say that, right? If you look at the presidential and the governor's races, it kind of matches.
100% accurate.
Okay.
There were 6 Democratic seats, 5 R, and Virginia, it was roughly divided, between R's and D's, and that was good. But the point is, the electorate, over 2 million people voted to take gerrymandering out of the system. And so now, then what happens? Then you have national Republican leaders that said, well, let's redraw Texas, okay? And I'm going to simplify it. What Texas did mid-decade was wrong. Then California said, well, we're going to make up for what Texas did, and we're going to redraw our districts. They're wrong. And then the Republican, in quick succession, North Carolina, Missouri, Ohio, they followed the Texas lead, okay? But there were several states that said, wait a second, we're not doing this. Drawing new districts happens after the census is taken every 10 years, we're not going to do it. And I thought Virginia would take that statesman-like position, okay? Just like Kansas, South Carolina, Maryland did. But nope, the Democratic leadership and all of the Democrats in the Virginia legislature voted along, followed in lockstep, party bosses, and said, we are going to do a mid-decade redrawing. But here's their rationale, John. Because these other states cheated, we got to cheat too to level the playing field.
Right.
Which is so stupid. Okay? I had hoped that Virginia would do what many states did and said, we're going to take the high ground, but they didn't. So there's where we are right now. I give credit to leaders, D's and R's in South Carolina and Kansas and Maryland that said, nope, we're not going to do this folly. Because, John, you know what's going to happen. The pendulum always swings.
You got it.
And when it swings back and the R's control it, they'll do the same thing. They'll do mid-decade redistricting. So,
and I think, Joe, that it kind of poisons the well for everything else going forward. I mean, look, we're fighting. We're not all going to agree. I'm mad about losing last year. I'll admit it. Okay. But, I've been in politics a long time. What you don't want to do, even if you're angry, is take an action which creates an environment where there's no way back to normal, where everyone is at each other's throats and it's not going to get fixed if the same people are still on the stage.
Well
and
put.
I think this does it.
Yeah, well put. This poisons any momentum to act as statesmen and in non-partisanship way. It does. And it's so wrong. And that's why I wrote it, And, I tried to find a great analogy. And I think, I don't want to be patting myself on the back, but I think I came up with a good one.
Okay.
And that was, as I put in my op-ed piece, let's say you have 50 students in the class, i.e. 50 states. You have 50 students in the class, and it turns out that 4 of the students cheated on their SOLs, and they're going to get into a better college, and they might even take a slot away from somebody else. If those children, the remaining 46, came home, is there any parent that would say to their child, you know what? Those 4 people cheated. It's okay for you to cheat just temporarily and just this one time in order to level the playing field.
Right. Good point.
No parent would say that or should say that.
Yeah.
But that's what's happening right now. And so that's what prompted me to write the op-ed piece. And I'll tell you, it's reprinted in many newspapers across the Commonwealth. And I simply spoke out my mind, which I've been doing for people that know me here in Central Virginia.
Oh yeah, we've been following you since Commonwealth's attorney days in Richmond. So
I just call it the way I see it, and you know what, John? I could care less. Some people applaud me, clap me on the back. Thank God, Joe, for speaking out. Others say, "Oh, you're a fake Democrat." Blah 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 blah. I don't care.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is, and people that know me, it's. I'm just calling it. I'm just speaking the truth.
Well, I'm appreciative of it, and I hope there'll be more people who will publicly do what you've done. I have had a couple of Democrats that I've known for years who have said this really makes them uncomfortable, that this decision to jam this through, which let me just ask you as a student of the law still after all of these years, am I correct, you think, when I make the assertion that this has been done in an illegal way? The law is really clear, and the umpires have just left the ballpark and aren't holding anybody accountable.
Of course it's illegal. Let me try to put this in very, very simple terms, and I say this respectfully, that a 10-year-old would understand.
Right, okay.
In Virginia, the supreme law in Virginia is our state constitution. Then that is followed by the Virginia Code, and then that is followed by local ordinances, okay? State code trumps local ordinances. The Virginia Constitution trumps everything, okay? We have in our Constitution a provision that says we have a redistricting commission that will redraw the lines. Now, what this legislation has done is it said, you know what? We're going to disregard that, but we're only going to do it temporarily. That's like saying, oh, we're going to disregard the Fourth Amendment or the Second Amendment or the Fifth Amendment, but just temporarily. How ridiculous is that?
Right.
Okay. And so it is violating the law, the state constitution, but there are a couple of other violations. The Virginia Code requires that the clerk of the House of Delegates provide copies of the proposed constitutional amendment to circuit court clerks' offices 90 days before the election. That wasn't done.
Right.
That wasn't done. Okay. And so.
And that's not a little thing. You know,
That's
if
the
you're
law.
mailing a letter to in the postal service, if you don't put a stamp on it, they tell you got to put a stamp on it. They send it right back to you. They don't do it just to be nice. I don't understand why in this situation where there's so much on the line, the courts won't say, hey guys, whether we agree with you or not is irrelevant. You've got to obey the letter of the law that you
John,
passed.
I'm not sure that didn't happen. The judge, I think was it Hurley in Tazewell?
Yeah.
Was it Hurley?
It was.
Okay. Said it's illegal. What you're doing is illegal. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then for 3 different reasons, you're violating the code, you're violating the Constitution, and you did not have an intervening election.
Right.
Okay. But the Virginia Supreme Court, and then he tried to enjoin the referendum from going forward. Now, the Virginia Supreme Court then said, nope, we're going to let the election go forward, and then we'll address it afterwards. I actually think that was a good thing. Here's why.
Do you? Tell me.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Courts do not ever want to be in the position where they are halting, stopping an election. Okay? So here's my prediction. If this referendum fails, well, then it fails. And it's a good thing that the people voted on it. If it passes, you ready for this? If it passes, the Supreme Court is going to step in and they're going to say, we gave you the vote because courts don't want to engage in political questions. They do not want to stop elections. But now the election's been had. That referendum was illegal.
Oh, boy.
The code wasn't followed. The state constitution was violated. We are invalidating it. That's my prediction.
You think they'll really do that?
Yes, I do. Well, maybe, John, that's because I'm a purist at heart, and I just think that I really believe I've got a strong faith. I just believe that in the end of the day, right prevails. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I also think my mother was a saint, that God has a sense of humor, but I do believe in the virtue of the rule of law. I do think that courts eventually get it correct and get it right. And don't be surprised if the Virginia Supreme Court steps in and said, we let you have your election because we didn't want to be in a position of stopping an election. Courts don't do that. But now that you did it, we have to make a ruling. And that referendum was illegal on 3 different ways.
Yeah.
The referendum is now voided.
It kind of takes me back to 2020 and the election there, where if you said, John, do you suspect there was cheating in Georgia and in other places across the country that cost Donald Trump the election in 2020? I would say, yeah. I think, we had COVID, we had millions and millions of mail-in ballots. All the normal checkpoints and rules were kind of thrown out because of COVID. And I don't trust these people, primarily modern Democrats. So, yeah, I think there was cheating. I don't know that I can prove it. One of the things that I thought was so important was before we had an inauguration of Donald Trump or Joe Biden, that the courts step in and do the best they can in a limited amount of time prior to January 20th of 2021 to clear up almost any question that was out there as best they could. Mm-hmm. And I was really disappointed and shocked that no one had standing. The courts didn't want to get involved. And I'm like, we've got numbers on a paper that show Joe Biden won. And I hate to lose, but I can accept defeat if I think that I've been fairly defeated.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not sure that we've been fairly defeated. I'm not 100%. Why won't someone engage on this before we have an inauguration? Because I don't know what the legal term is. There's bound to be a legal Latin term for it. But, there is a point at which something's done and the damage is done and you can't undo it, so you don't engage. What is that? What is that? There's bound to be that term. Something's done, and to undo it now would do more damage.
I know. I'm trying to rack my brain. Here's my take on it.
Okay.
Let's go back to Bush versus Gore.
Yeah.
I got my master's in law in Europe, and I wrote my thesis on the non-justiciability of that presidential race and did a deep dive. And that was the one where on election night, it still hadn't been determined because we didn't count votes in Florida. And then there were two lawsuits, Bush versus Gore 1, Bush versus Gore 2. The state Supreme Court of Florida twice took life back into Gore's campaign and resuscitated his campaign. Twice, the United States Supreme Court said, no, the counting is done. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And you will go, many people counted and you could get arguments both different ways. But at the end of the day, Gore said, listen, we have to have some finality. I'm disappointed. I lost. I think I won, but the United States Supreme Court has issued its ruling. We're going to follow that. And Bush was the president, and then George Bush was reelected again. Here, I don't think we have that. I don't think we have to worry about counting. Counting gets into
you're right. That's a different topic. It's just like, do you touch? If you're going to put a point on the board in baseball, you still got to touch first, second, third, and home for it to count. And it seems like everyone acknowledges, well, we're making exceptions here, or we repealed a law that was on the books for 30 or 40 years so that it looks like we have obeyed the law. But I mean, are you serious? You're going to go and repeal something from 1972 and try to act like that's a legitimate way to validate what you're doing today? I just don't know why the courts are putting up with it.
Again, remember, one court, a circuit court, did not put up with it.
Right.
Okay. But the Supreme Court, has said, wait a second, let them have their election and then we'll get back to it. And I'm going to repeat what I said before. I think if the yes votes prevail, and I hope that they don't, it's bad for Virginia, because the pendulum will absolutely swing back. Then I think the Supreme Court will stand in. But this is a clear cut. Here's the Democrats admit they are violating the state constitution, albeit, to listen to them, only temporarily.
Yes.
That's like me driving 100 miles an hour down Interstate 95 and saying, yeah, but I'm only doing it temporarily because I want to get to Hatteras for my vacation. But I'll get back on track. Okay.
Right.
I'm only going to rob the bank temporarily.
Right.
I'm only going to violate the state constitution temporarily. It is so silly. Okay. So,
well, I hope you're right, Joe. But on the other hand, the way people have behaved across the country and even here in Virginia with the hostility in the streets and what we saw in 2020, God, if the courts step in and invalidate an election where, God, I hope the majority of the people of Virginia don't think this is okay, but let's say they do, I think you'll see violence in the streets.
I don't know. I'm not sure. Here, listen, I've got, believe it or not, there's still some Democrats that out there that talk to me, and ours, and it's kind of interesting, John, that right now I'm sitting as kind of the guy, the independent, right in the middle that both people are talking to, and I tell the D's, I tell my friends that are, to the extent that I still have some in the House and Senate, you're wrong, and you want to know something, they know it, but they are following in lockstep their party bosses. And I tell the Republicans, hey, listen, the D's are wrong, but what would you be doing? Would you be doing the same thing they're doing if you control the 3 levels of power? I hope not. But I just, it's so clear cut.
Well, I certainly wouldn't. I certainly wouldn't do it, especially since we have a constitutional amendment. Like
Right.
This took it off the table, in my opinion, where we shouldn't even be having the discussion. But
well, I wish you were the head of the state Senate right now. I wish you were sitting there as lieutenant governor, and you would have, but for few evil curves that were thrown at you. But hey, again, John, my mother had a great expression. I heard it 1,000 times from her. She said, Joe, God works in mysterious ways. And your election could have been one of those mysterious things. You don't know what's going to come from it, John.
That's
you
true.
Really
never
don't.
know. You never know. Yeah.
Where you don't know where that's going to land you or push you.
Yeah. I think you just got to keep true to what you believe, and hopefully that matches a moral compass that's legitimate. But
keep pushing, keep putting that left foot forward, and you're going to be okay. By the way, there are some other Democrats, interestingly enough, that are not in power right. Take Chap Peterson. Chap was he was a Democrat in the state Senate. I served with him. He lost his primary because he had the audacity to say, hey, we got to go back to school and take off the mask. So the party people jettisoned him too. But he joined an op-ed piece with George Allen. And both
I saw.
Said this is wrong.
There are a few of you out there who are pretty gutsy and brave. And that's one reason I want to shine a spotlight on you, to say it is okay to step out from your own party if you feel strongly about something this fundamental.
Exactly.
And I appreciate you doing
what I did.
Former Senator Joe Morrissey, I hope I'll see you in person again soon. I appreciate you coming on the program today.
You got it, man. Have a great day, and congratulations on your podcast.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. All right, let's take a quick break. I do want to say that in the next segment, when producer Dan joins me, if you'll send me an email at thereidrevolution @gmail.com, and put tickets in the header, the subject header, I've got a pair of tickets to the VIP reception and the Virginia Forum tonight. David Arsani from the Washington Examiner will be speaking about the history of guns in the United States, both in a practical sense and a legislative sense, and what the future looks like, especially this push to disarm the law-abiding while not punishing the people who are using weapons, guns in particular, to kill people. I mean, talk about that. The Virginia Forum tonight at the Glen Allen Cultural Arts Center in Henrico County. Put an email that says tickets in the header, and let's say the first 5 people who do that, I'll give you a pair of tickets to the VIP reception and to the event tonight, the Virginia Forum tonight. We'll take a quick break and be back with producer Dan in just a moment on the Reid Revolution.
Republicans and Democrats work together to get politicians out of the business of picking their own voters. 2/3 of Virginians voted for this fair and balanced process. Now, career politicians in Richmond want to end the nonpartisan process and draw rigged congressional maps for friends. They want to end competitive elections in Virginia and silence your voice. That's more than unfair. It's an undemocratic power grab. Vote no on partisan gerrymandering by April 20.
Yep, vote no and vote now. Have you voted, producer Dan? I should ask you that. Yeah.
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet. I'll take care of it.
Yet. All right.
Take care
I'm glad.
of it. Yeah.
I am glad to be able to share that message going forward. All right. Let's take a look at the best and worst of the internet, what producer Dan has stacked up for us today.
Let me see where we'll start here. Almost 40 years ago,
yes,
Donald Trump was in a different position than he is now, but he was speaking a similar sort of language about the country of Iran. Let's play this clip here. I think folks will find it interesting.
I'm here because I'm personally tired of seeing this great country of ours being ripped off.
But as far as Trump is concerned, our allies are only part of the problem. The real culprit is Iran.
Why couldn't we go in and take over some of their oil, which is along the sea?
How would you do that? Would you send in the Marines? Would you take a chance in a war?
Let them have Iran. You take their oil. That's what
How?
How?
I mean, do we want a war? What do you mean
go
we
in,
take their oil?
You go in. You're
How
gonna have
do
a
we
war,
go
Barbara.
in?
You're going to have a war by being weak.
Okay, how do we go in? What do we do?
Excuse me.
Yeah.
You're going to have a war, and it's going to start in the Middle East.
What if the Soviet Union said, you do this to Iran, we're going to come in?
I don't believe they'd do it. The next time Iran attacks this country, go in and grab one of their big oil installations, and I mean grab it and keep it, and get back your losses, because this country has lost plenty because of...
Wow. You know, Trump is pretty consistent. Year in and year out, decade in and decade out. I mean, it's an aggressive attitude. And you could see Barbara Walters' reaction. Oh my God, what are we going to do? Why would we do that? Well, maybe because they're killing Americans, and maybe we should make there be some really horrible consequences for killing Westerners and Americans. And maybe instead of sending our money in mass to a region of people who hate us, we should turn the tables on them and say, you know, you didn't want to play fair, you didn't want to play nice, you wanted to kill people, so here are the consequences. I think Trump was right then, and I think he's right now, as controversial as that may be.
Yeah, and I guess to the folks who think that Donald Trump has flip-flopped on some issues or whatever else, it sounds like he's speaking the same language today that he was then. So yeah, it's sounds
look,
a lot alike.
What Donald Trump ran on was not getting into these wars, if at all possible. I mean, I would really ask anyone who's a thinking person, did you think Donald Trump was promising you that under no circumstances would there be any kind of international conflict in which we launched missiles and sent ships and killed a bunch of people and potentially put boots on the ground? Potentially. Was that your understanding? Was that there was no chance that would happen? I think he did a great job the first term of not allowing that to happen. It's another reason why, knowing what we know about the history of Iran and its hostility towards the United States, and knowing what I observed about Donald Trump being as obnoxious as he is sometimes, being a very reserved person and not taking the bait for a lot of conflicts in the first term, that I trust the judgment here more than I would if it was, quite frankly, some other Republicans who seem to always take the bait. And maybe, you know, if you're really cynical, you think that they're using it to enrich their little buddies with the defense industrial complex. I don't think Trump's doing that.
No, I think he thinks that Iran is a legitimate threat, and I certainly agree with him about that. I probably think that Iran is even more of a threat than he thinks. I wouldn't be going to a negotiating table whatsoever with Iran under any circumstances at this point. I'd get rid of this regime, pay the consequences for having waited this long to do it now, rather than paying worse consequences by waiting any longer later.
There you go. That's true. That is true. And if we don't, I mean, how many decades are we going to allow this stuff to go on? And then we're going to wake up one day and they have the announcement they got the nuclear bomb. And everybody in New York City, then has to wait until they decide to slaughter everybody in New York. And Americans don't understand the motivation of Islamic jihad. And if your reaction is, oh my God, you're being racist, you're being Islamophobic, you've been asleep for the last 40 years. I'm not saying your neighbor is going to harm you, and I'm not saying you should harm your neighbor, but you should be sober and honest and educated about the threat of Islamic jihad. And I don't know what we do about people in this country. I don't know how we're going to manage that, but I can sure as hell tell you we should stop people overseas who want to kill us from being in a position to do that easily. And I don't think we should apologize for it.
No, and John, I'm going to be harsh here. How about we stop getting angry at Donald Trump for what's going on right now and start getting more angry at that traitor known as Barack Obama for sending millions upon millions to Iran a decade ago and helping them get closer and closer to the brink of Armageddon.
It's true.
What
Barack Obama and Valerie Jarrett, this is probably one of the most fundamental big mistakes. I hope it was a mistake and a miscalculation. to enrich Iran. You didn't win friends. You didn't get them to the peace table. You didn't make them nice people. You didn't offer them an olive branch and bring them into the world of nations where they're going to treat everybody fairly. You enriched and empowered them so they could do bad things. And I hope, because I hate to think that Barack Obama and Valerie Jarrett and that team did it maliciously to harm Americans. I don't know, but
I don't think anything was done by accident in that administration. I don't think any of this stuff was done by accident. And we talked about this.
You think it was?
Oh yeah, it was totally deliberate. And look,
them.
remember this. I mean, this should have gotten Barack Obama impeached and removed from office alone. But when what happened in Benghazi happened, remember that he went in front of the United Nations as what is essentially the chief law enforcement officer in the country, the chief executive of the United States of America, and framed an innocent man, knowingly framed an innocent man, and claimed that the Benghazi attack had been the result of anger or some sort of outrage over a YouTube video that nobody had ever seen. And that guy's life, I think, was totally upended. I know something about that. And by an administration that did not care about what was good and what was bad, about just who cares? Let's just save our own skins and find some poor schmo to blame this all on.
Right. Benghazi revealed how nefarious a lot of those people were, and it makes me question everything that comes out of their mouth. People think that Donald Trump and his team are liars. I don't think that's the case, but you weren't paying attention when Hillary Clinton, as Secretary of State, was let people burn, let people die, and then try to cover it up. Yeah, what difference at this point does it make?
Who cares about
dead
justice?
Americans? Right. Yeah, good point.
What do you think
You're
this
right.
is, America? Yeah,
it's important, Dan, to have people like you around who have that kind of memory.
Yep.
The only way I have survived in life is to delete files.
Yeah.
Seriously, I get so angry, and I do feel like people have, I've had people do things that I probably should hold a grudge, and I haven't held a grudge. And one of my best friends in college who died, during COVID.
I remember that.
You
yeah.
remember?
Although not of COVID, it was cancer, right?
Yeah, it was cancer, but it was during COVID and everything. But anyway, he used to say, was one of my best friends, I would start talking to somebody and he would be like, "You remember what he did? You remember what he said? You remember? Do you remember that? Why are you engaged? Why are you trying to help this person? They screwed you over. They tried to harm you." And I was like, "Oh my God, you know what? I'd forgotten about that." And so, for some reason, he had a memory like an elephant, and he remembered every slur, every grudge, every slight, every real bad thing that was done. And, I get eaten up inside already with how I'm processing things. I have had to just let some things go. But what you just brought up about Benghazi and enriching the Iranians is really important. And you know what? Going back to what we talked about at the beginning of the show, that's what these young men at Hampton-Sydney don't know, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
they weren't even alive on 9/11. I mean,
it's
amazing now to think about that people in college at this point weren't even alive when that,
that's right.
when that happened. It's like,
so you've got to forgive them, or at least give them some latitude before you freak out about it. You have to say, they don't know, and they've been fed a lot of garbage, both in the educational system and through the media.
Sure.
So it would be a miracle if they did know about all of this stuff.
No, and forgive my senioritis. I'm sure that I've said this before, whether on the radio station with you or on the podcast, but I forget whether I did or not. I tell these young folks who weren't alive on 9/11. I say, well, I feel bad for you because obviously we've been moving toward moving down the path toward totalitarianism for about a century. But I think that September 10th, 2001 was the last day that America was more like the country that she was founded to be than not. After that day, everything kind of changed. And, of course, the attack itself was awful, but then as a result of the attack, government asks us to give them an inch. They take a mile, of course. And
You were
look
right
at how
about
that
that.
snowballed with COVID. I mean, if we thought that some of the restrictions after 9/11 were bad, the restrictions during COVID were even worse. You and I were on the phone last night, and I was telling you about a movie that won the Oscar for Best Foreign Language Film 20 years ago this year at the Academy Awards, The Lives of Others. Folks, The Lives of Others, a German film about East Germany in the 1980s. I recommend that everybody see it. I think that William F. Buckley called it the best movie he ever saw before he died. But I was telling you that when I saw it, it was harrowing to me because you see movies about tyranny. It's one thing to watch Spartacus or Braveheart. It's like, oh man, things were really awful 2,000 years ago or whatever. When it's the 1980s, it's like, oh my gosh, oh, this was happening during my lifetime. But I went a while without seeing the film again, and I saw it again for the first time in a long while, many, many years, in 2021, 2022. During COVID. And what scared me at that point, watching The Lives of Others again, was the indifference I had while watching it. It was like, oh, that's not so bad. I was saying that about East Germany in the 1980s.
Compared to what our own government
That's
is
right.
doing.
Our COVID restrictions were so oppressive that, I mean, no, you can't leave your house to go outside on your patio to tend to your plants.
You're not allowed to sit on the beach. You're not
not
allowed
even
to
East
walk down
Germany
the
did
street.
that.
Right.
We're worse than East Germany. Oh my gosh.
Good point.
But yeah,
and that's not. I don't think you're being bombastic. I think
no.
that's,
I think sadly,
when
I'm
you
being
pull
very
perspective
realistic.
and you realize what's happening, it's pretty damning. All right, what else you got, real quick?
Yeah,
we're running out of time.
Yeah, maybe I'll skip over the Iran Lego video and save that for
let's
tomorrow,
do that
given
tomorrow.
that we've already been kind of down. Well, Easter is coming up, John, and that means that it's time for a hunky Jesus contest. So here we go.
No. You got to be kidding me. And of course, it's the gays. What is going on? Why? Oh, Lord. I mean, how blasphemous is this?
Yeah.
How blasphemous is this? Look, you don't have to be a
Pardon the bad
religious
language
person
there, folks.
to say that this is outrageous. And I'm not going to defend it. I am not going to defend it. I think that is so offensive. And you know what's weird? All of those people in San Francisco, that was San Francisco, right? I think it was San Francisco.
Yeah, it's got to be.
Looked like it. So all those gay guys in San Francisco and women and who knows? I don't think, maybe they're not all gay. All those people in San Francisco are doing something that they know will offend Christian conservatives or Christians in general in the United States. When will they do that to Islam? Oh, hell no, they won't do it to Islam because they know that they'll get their throats cut. And so that in and of itself should tell you something. You will always be abused if you tolerate it. Now, I'm not saying that Christians should behave like radical Islamic jihadists and kill people that, insult them. But there's something really nefarious going on in that community that unfortunately I have some connection to. And I'm going to be one of the people to say, this is outrageous. That's not even done. I keep going back to this. What you do with drunk people in a bar that's outrageous and sexual or, gasp-inducing, like, oh my God, I can't believe you said that. Do it at 2 o'clock in the morning in some comedy club or some gay club where everybody is drunk. I think the standard is so low for that environment, and it's not going to be in front of people. It's not like you're positioning this and putting it in front of people to represent you. Why? I ask the gay community, why would you not think that Christians would hate you if you do stuff like that? You should expect people to hate you. Do you want them to hate you? I thought we were trying to create a society where we weren't hated. So
Right.
you do something where the response is understandably complete hatred? That's stupid. That's so ridiculously outrageous and offended. I am shocked by that.
Yeah, it's a sight. It's a sight to be seen. Well,
Yeah, but there will be no hunky Mohammed contest in
right.
San Francisco mocking.
No, yeah, much to
Islamists.
Homer's point, the question, yeah. No hunky Muhammad contest this year? Yeah, no, I don't think so. Not unless people want to get bombed.
Well, let's do this also.
Yeah.
I'm all excited about America 250. I'm hoping we're going to have another 250 years of history, although some days I question that. But I've been looking for kind of premier souvenirs and events, quite frankly, that are unique in this 250th year. And I guess we're going to have it's not a NASCAR race. It's a Grand Prix race in Washington this year. Is that
really?
correct?
Oh, I didn't. I was not aware. Wow, there you go.
You see, nobody knows. Nobody knows anything.
More
What are we
sports
doing?
knowledge. You're dropping sports knowledge on me right now.
What are we doing that's special in the 250th year? It's like everything has stopped, and maybe I just haven't mentioned it. But take a look at this. It is traditional every 50 years to have a reprint of the Declaration of Independence. I've kind of thought, oh, somebody's finally doing it. That's interesting with the original print or the etching that was used to make the prints. So they'll do one this year. Take a look at what hit my email box last night. And I was scrolling through and I thought, oh, I'll get one of these. And then I looked at the price. Are you kidding me? The Oval Office limited edition framed Declaration of Independence print, $8,350. And then there's another version that's $7,000. The cheap version, if you're a cheapskate, $7,350. Are you kidding?
What a bargain!
What in the hell is that all about? How could it possibly be worth that? How could it possibly be? Are you making a donation to a charity with that money? Man, that's crazy.
Golly day.
I will not be doing. I'm going to go to the National Archives when I'm in D.C. tomorrow and buy the $4 fake parchment version that looks like it's from 1776 that these dummies try to sell on eBay. I don't know if you don't go on eBay, do you?
Very rarely. Only
so
if I can't find something else on Amazon or something.
Put on Declaration of Independence and you'll see these dummies.
Yeah.
Or maybe they really are trying to pull a fast one. I think they're just stupid people who think they have discovered a copy of the Declaration of Independence when they find the fake parchment version stuck in some book someplace, and they try to sell it for $10,000 on eBay. And you can't. I'm not going to take the time to email someone directly and say, "Do you know how dumb you are? This thing is a souvenir." A souvenir shop copy of the thing. It's not worth $4, and you're trying to sell it for $10,000. But I could spend all my time fighting those fights.
Well, I had one more video for us.
Okay.
As I mentioned,
What you got?
we are approaching Easter, which means that we're probably approaching most folks' spring break, which means that we're probably getting questions from children to parents about, can't we just go to Disney World? Can we go to Disney World, Mom, Dad? Can't we go to Disney World? Well, our good friend Pittsburgh Dad has something to say about that.
I heard that after you buy a $150 ticket down Disney, you gotta spend another $35 to skip the lines. Well, we're skipping the lines for free, because we ain't even going. The only way you are getting down Disney is if you join the high school marching band or win the Super Bowl. So you better start practicing that clarinet and your deep pass. Oh, it's the Epcot Food and Wine Festival. You can get halushki, funnel cake, and beer right down at Church Fair. There you go. Germany. You want Italy? Spaghetti dinner down at Fire Hall. Mexico? Boom. Fire up the stove. Anderland. You want to go on a Disney ride? Well, sit on a washer and close your eyes. Space Mountain. Then I'll put on Aerosmith tape. Rock and roller coaster. You want Splash Mountain? Roll down a hill. I'll hit you with a hose. Disney got amazing fireworks. So do we. I bought them ones out of a guy's trunk down a gas station. Exact same thing. Don't we get free tickets to Disney World with that subscription to Disney Plus? No. I'll tell you right now, if we weren't stealing your...
You love Pittsburgh.
I love
guy.
Pittsburgh Dad. I love Pittsburgh Dad.
All right.
the ESPN sensation. He's always on the Pat McAfee show now, and apparently Aaron Rodgers is a big fan. That's one of the reasons he came to Pittsburgh. Believe it or not, like I gotta meet this Pittsburgh Dad guy. So
interesting.
So good for Kurt. But yeah. So anyway, Dad, of course, finding ways not to go to Disney World and spend the money. Sure.
Crazy stuff.
Oh,
all
my
right.
gosh.
Well, on that note, let's wrap up.
That's right.
We will see you tomorrow. Make sure you shoot me a note if you'd like to attend the Virginia Forum tonight at the Glen Allen Cultural Arts Center. At 7 o'clock is the speech, the VIP reception at 6. You can shoot me a note at thereidrevolution@gmail.com. Make sure you do that. That'll be terrific, and we'll see you tomorrow right here on The Reid Revolution.